Okay, why do I cut sunstones? Especially these ones that have no color really. Because a lot of the color in the sunstones comes from the angles of the cut. This was a colorless piece of rough, and I was able to get color from it. But this was in the morning, and in the evening it looked completely different. This is a different stone, but you see, it's a good looking stone, and I've been cutting sunstones since 2020. I started cutting them. So 6 years, on my 6th year of sunstone cutting. And I learned a little bit as I go along. All of the stones in the video so far have been stones that I cut that didn't have any color. But they did, but not like you might think. It's the reflection from the full spectrum sunlight and the reflection you get from sunshine in the shade as well. It's hard to explain unless you see it. This one was so pleochroic that I got this indoor. Yeah, that's in the place where I cut the stones, and it's amazing that I figured that out. Yeah, so what I do is I started cutting these, and I come up with a thing I call a squeeze cut. Originally I cut it on a X cube, and I'll show you a picture of that later in the video. But this is a marquee cut sunstone, and the time of day and the amount of clouds change the spectrum of light, and you get different colors from that, and the angles as well. But that's both the yellow and orange one and the blue and orange one are the same stone. And pictures were just taken different times of the day and on different days. This one has blue, which is unusual. And this one had a lot of schiller. There's me. And I've, like I said, been cutting sunstones for going on 6 years. And I originally, when I started, I cut them in more standard cuts. Then I came up with this thing I call the squeeze cut. And then I determined what was the best angle to cut the pavilion at the cullet. And I determined that. Then and that made the stone brighter and the color was better. Then I determined the best angles to cut the top of the pavilion. And that took about 6 months. And I might not be 100% right on either one of these numbers, so I am not going to give them out willy-nilly. But anyways, then I realized next thing I had to figure out was the angle at the crown. And the first one above the girdle is the, I think it's C1. Anyways, on most diagrams, well, on mine, I call it the break facet or C1. And I determined what that would be and what would be the best angle for brightness and color. And then I developed also, when I first made the cut, I developed these midlines. And the main facets on the squeeze cut actually have either 5 facets and they're little domes, or 9 facets. And so the stones, if they have 6 main facets on the top and the bottom, they have 12 more high spots on the stone to create more color inside. It has a way to create color, and it improves the pleochroic effect, and that looks like a flower, and that's not why I cut it, but that's what I got. And then I am now cutting one sunstone at 15 degrees, one at 16, one at 17, one at 18, all the way up to 27 degrees, one stone at each degree for the star facet, or the top row next to the table. And when I get all those done, I'll be able to see which one provides me with the best effect, and without using some kind of software to tell me, and at what time of day and everything else. See, this stone was taken in the morning, right after sunrise, and that's the color I get at that time of day on a lot of these stones. And between, let's say an hour, 45 minutes to an hour after sunrise to 2 hours after sunrise. This is a sapphire, which I did a rectangle squeeze cut on it. I'm really happy with it, and this is the optimum angle to the sun and got the most color out of it. Now on the other side, it turned green and yellow. This is also a white sapphire, which I cut with the same technique, and I left it an oval, and I got this great color at sunset, but it wasn't very strong the rest of the day. There it is when I was cutting it in indoor light. These are sunstones, so you can see they're yellow, but they don't have any other color in them. And this is what they look like after they're cut and in the sunshine. And that's one indoor light. And there it is when I'm working on the pavilion. And that's a squeeze cut. But over 4 years, you learn a little bit about what makes them pop. And 2 degrees one way or another, and you lose all the effect of the pleochroic color in the stone, which is a nice thing, but it only happens it changes all day long. It only happens in daytime. And the brighter, the less cloudy it is, the better that some of the stones do. And some of the stones do better in indirect light than they do in direct light. So I guess there is a cut for either one. But some of the cuts produce more greens and blues. But generally, when the sun is near the peak at noon, you get more greens and blues out of the stones. This stone is a more recent one, and you can see some color in it. It's going to work really good in the daytime. That's one of the first ones I cut, and you could see the color was on both sides of the stone was different, and the middle was clear. These other ones are very bright. They were later stones after I changed the angles. And that's a pear-shaped one, and it does change color quite a bit over the course of the day. All these pictures were taken about 20 minutes apart. And if I turned 50 degrees to one side or the other, I got completely different colors. And then I was walking back and forth and up and down the driveway, and I took pictures of it every 2 times I walked up and down the driveway, and it changed. And the color was crazy great closer I got to sunset. And that seems to be the case with a lot of the stones. Sunset brings a lot of color out in the sky, and it also brings a lot of color out in the sunstones. This one only has, it has 8 main facets, and it has 4 keel lines. And so my stones are cut to a keel line, and this was done on a 96 index. And that was the first stone I did on a 96 index instead of a 120. I cut most of the sunstones on a 120 index. And that one was cut on the 120. And it's great color. There's the other one. And the light actually goes around inside the stone in the circle on that stone. These are some stones I cut prior to that. And one of them's just a basic step cut. That's it. It was cut with the brightest angle at the culet, but it isn't as bright because the angles aren't all at the optimum angle. Here's some other ones I cut earlier in the year, and there's another. It was a lot of work producing all these stones. Here's what they look like in indoor light on the dopstick. And this is one that had color. Every 7 to 10 stones, I cut one with color using what I've learned to try and see. Here's another stone which was colorless before I cut it. And those two were cut using, the bigger one was using the squeeze cut. There it is out in the sun. You see I'm moving towards the sun. There it is on the right time of day. It's the same stone. It's the same stone as the yellow one you just saw. And you see towards sunset, it looks totally different. There's another one. And I don't know how many sunstones I've cut, but been working on them off and on for 6 years. Some of them I sold, but it's only 2 or 3 a year. One year I think I sold 5 to one customer. Most of the years I just put them back. I'm not really trying to sell them till I know what's the best thing to do to make the best possible stone I can. This one has 45 degrees cut off of the sides. There's a colored stone again. Here's another sapphire that I did. And here it is near sunset, and it changed color a little bit. But I used a squeeze cut on it, and it caused it to become pleochroic. At certain directions to the sun, you can see the change in color. Here, you'll get to watch it. As I spin around in a circle, I videoed it. And this is near sunset, but not quite. I think it was sunrise. And here it is at sunset, another stone. This isn't a sapphire, this is a sunstone. And this one's a sunstone as well. Yeah, and here's another sunstone. This one was right as sun was rising, and this is later with the same stone after the sun rose. And this is probably 10 o'clock in the morning. And a little later, maybe 9:30 actually. Here's one upside down and the same stone right side up. And there it is on the dopstick. And here's one that I took outside in an optimum angle to the sun at the time. And another. Well, you can see this is a piece of the rough. And this is one of these two stones was that piece of rough. But really made nice colored stone, even though it was totally clear. And got everything to line up really well. Here's a colored stone. This was a colored piece of rough using the same cut. And I was really happy with how this one came out. But I have since found that some of the angles weren't quite what they should have been. But I still like the way this one came out in the color. See, I'm trying to learn what are the optimum angles before I use great colored pieces of rough when I'm doing this experiment or this research. And you see, these things can change a lot. That was around 11:30 morning, the green one. But the same one was orange at another time of day and green and orange in the afternoon. This is shot at indoor light, and you can see the pleochroism inside the stone. And, as the light's going through there, it's turning the stone orange. There really isn't a lot of schiller in it, just some. There's more schiller in it, that stone. And this early morning, and that's a sapphire at sunset. And this is at noon. I got this one GIA certified. I used to have a jewelry store, and I ran it for 15 years, and it was semi-successful. I enjoyed it, and I liked the people. I plan on opening back up someday, so there is a purpose to cutting all these sunstones. Also, I enjoy it. It gives me great peace. And I am keeping my mind sharp. Some more pictures of the sapphire at different times of the day. Turns some great color. The pleochroic effect on that stone is amazing. That's the stone that turned all the great color of the sapphire. It's a Montana sapphire. This is a different stone. It's a sunstone. And here's a sunstone in the morning. Probably an hour after sunrise with the color. And that's the original Montana sapphire. There's another sunstone. And now you watch and see this stone at several different times of the day. And the direction changes the color as well. Now these ones were almost identical, and you can see the pink on the edges. Here's one that I cut before I knew how to make the angles, and I got a multicolored stone, which is very valuable. This one is orange like this for about an hour in the morning. The ones that have the dark color in this picture, they hold their color all the time. Yeah, they weren't cut in a squeeze cut. They'd be that color anytime you look at them. And this one's a squeeze cut, so it depends on the sunlight, the presence or lack thereof, whether or not you get this gray color effect. And you won't ever get the same colors with the stone 2 minutes in a row. Changes all the time, and your direction that you're facing changes the color as well. It's pretty amazing. I've enjoyed cutting all these sunstones. Pretty much cut one every 10 to 20 days. Sometimes in 5 days I get one done. But I don't work on them every day, maybe twice a week. But I just keep steady at it. And I change the angles until I figure out what the best angle for each row of facets is, and to get the best color out of the stones. I don't plan on recutting them. Also, in most of these trillions, you'll see they're kind of fatter than just a triangle. Well, that's because there's 6 points, and there's 6 keel lines in the stone if you look from face down, and there's major points and minor points on the girdle, and keel line that goes across, and each keel line has a major point and a minor point. And then halfway from the top of the crown to the bottom, there's a midline. And I make that to cause more for the light to stay in the stone longer and overlap each other. That's why you're not seeing one color in a lot of these stones. You're seeing multiple colors. It's because the light is overlapping itself and staying in the stone longer. And when it overlaps, you get a different color. Because the light goes into the sunstone, it's doubly refractive. And there's one that with no pleochroic effect, with the sun hitting it directly. But there's the same stone facing the sun. But anyways, the sunlight goes into the stone, then it splits into two separate spectrums. And then it can overlap, and where it overlaps, you get a color. And you get like a play of color in these stones, like an opal. And I cut opals for 4 or 5 years before I ever touched a sunstone. And a lot of my thinking for cutting crystal opal went into cutting these stones. So you can pick it up, but it takes me a long time to learn. And see, that stone looked really bad from certain angles to the sun, and then looked crazy great at other times of the day, focused in on the color. So basically, you spin it around in a circle till the thing turns the color you want, then you lift it up and down towards the sky till you get the color you want. Here I'm spinning around in the circle to find the optimum color. You can't really see it, but that's what I'm doing. And there I'm just holding it up in the parking lot at work. And there's one that I made a 6-sided star on. And I really like this stone. But we're getting into the early stretch of time here. Yeah. And I'm happy with this, you know. Here's some more from an earlier group that I cut. Yeah, and these were all squeeze cuts. And at this point I had the optimum angles for the pavilion, top and bottom, and for the first row in the crown developed. And all these stones are pretty dynamic and colorful certain times of the day. There is one with the sun on it directly. And this is a stone in the shop. Now this one I cut just a standard step cut. And it's a pear shape. Here's a squeeze cut, and that was one of the largest ones I've ever cut. It was 14 carats, and it was a clear. Here's a smaller one, but had great color. There's the 14 carat. Here it is again. Looks totally different. Here it is at another time of day. And at another here. I expected to be able to create color by the cut, but I expected it to always be that color. But the direction the sun hits and the amount of clouds in the sky will determine what color it turns, really. So if you spin around in a circle, you'll see it. There's a color change going on. As long as you let the stone rotate with you. And some amazing things happened, and I tried to photograph most of them, but I didn't get pictures of all of them. Here's a great one there. And this stone was a little bit wonky, but the color was still good. Here's another one that I really like, this stone. There's a piece of rough before I cut it. There it is again from the side. See the little green in it. Here's another stone. And another. And another. All at different times. It was the same stone 3 different times. This is a different stone. But here it is. This is in the morning, early. Here it is right after sunset. Here it is right as the sun's setting. Here I'm holding the stone at sunset. And you catch a glimpse. I'm spinning around in a circle there, and you see the orange comes when I get to a certain point. And then when I turn past it so far, you lose the orange. But I don't know if you'll see that again. This one was orange and green in the other picture. Now, in this video, it turns from orange and green to all orange as I spin around. Same stone there. And you can see this is probably a different time of the day. Here's that same stone again. And I'm not sure what time of day it was, but it was really orange at that point. Sometimes it's the clouds. They're really thick and the stones don't show much pleochroic effect. Here's one in my hand, and that's the same stone spun around towards the sun. And here at another time of the day, and another. But you can basically face the sun, you'll get one color. If you turn it to the right, maybe 25%, you'll get another color. And in between, every 5 degrees, you'll get different colors at each spot. It's really hard to explain unless you can see it. But the stones that are strongly pleochroic, they'll show it on half a circle. They'll show the color. And on the other half of the circle, they look like a plush diamond, which is a yellow stone that has almost no color in it at all. And I have a few pictures of those as well. In here you'll see them. But they're very bright and shiny. And Tiffany's used to call them plush diamonds. And they sold them in the late 1800s through the 1950s. And some of their jewelry, Oregon Sunstones, that's the name today for this stone. And it was a feldspar. And it's a gem quality feldspar, and I'm glad I did this experiment. And it's always a surprise what color it's going to turn. When you start, you don't have any idea. I make a few adjustments, and then I get the color the next day when I take it in the sun. Sometimes I have to wait 3 days because it's so cloudy here. But when the sun finally comes out, I get my reward and I'm happy. So most people overlook the clear sunstones because they don't understand that it has the same chemicals in it as the ones that you can see the color. And you get the best of both worlds. You get a stone that looks like a champagne diamond, and you get a stone that turns 10 or 15 different colors over the course of 2 or 3 days. So who wouldn't want that? So I just keep cutting them and videoing them and putting out little shorts of these over the years. And I know that some of you have been watching the shorts since I started. And if you have, please say hi. I'm really happy to have all of my customers. Now, these are the ones that have color, the sunstones, and those are ones that are clears, basically. So the difference is there's a ball of color in the center of the stones that have color. And then after I cut the ones that have color in the center, they still have some of the clear around it on the outside. So I'm trying to determine what are the optimum best angles for the clear stones, so when I do cut stones with color, I get the combination and make a crazy great stone. And that's my goal when I'm cutting sunstones. And before the video's over, you'll see some of my first tries weren't that great. They were okay, but they weren't the best. And these ones are all still good, though. It's lots of fun to see the stones do this, so I share it with you. Yeah, I'm not using anything but sunlight here to make it turn all these colors. It's just the angle, because it's pleochroic. Here's one in the afternoon sun, closer to noon. And this one was taken right when the sun came up. You get this color. I mean, the sun's just cresting the horizon. And this is what happens. Right before it goes over the horizon, you can see it. And that's the stone right there before I finished it. And here it is a little bit later as it's getting closer to coming over the horizon. And there you go. Now the sun's getting a little bit higher and higher. There's a stone out in the sun on my hand. But there's the same stone in the box. Here's a colored stone, and this one had great red color. Here it is right side up. And you see how deep I made the pavilion? Well, the crown wasn't as deep, but I got really nice red color out of this one and not too much schiller. You can see all the way through to the culet, and it's a nice stone. Gets really bright. Some of my jeweler friends liked it enough they wanted to buy it, but I kept it anyways. I'd rather have the stone than the money. See, I have a job, and I'm doing this until I retire, and then I might open a jewelry store. I had a jewelry store for 15 years. Then I'll be able to make people pretty rings and pendants and earrings out of the stones I cut myself instead of buying them from people. And I should be able to make people pretty happy with these. They're better than what you can get in most jewelry stores or from other cutters. Some of them other cutters are better than me, I think, as well. Yeah, so, but not too many. And when I get done doing this experiment, my sunstones will be among the best in the world. And that's what I'm trying to do. So this is one of the colored ones. Here it is when it's still on the dopstick. This is a different colored stone that I cut before that one. But you can see the color in it. It's pretty good. And here it is when it was done. It's not very big. It was like 50 pointer, but it was really nice color. So I didn't let it go to waste. And this is a multicolored one that I cut. And I cut it in with a step cut first, and then I went over it with Portuguese cut afterwards. And it makes a hologram inside of a Victorian cross, which is pretty amazing. I tried to sell it out of a jewelry store on consignment for a while, but I never did. I'm glad I still have it. It's a nice stone. Here's another one that I made earlier in my cutting before. I think it's one of the first squeeze cuts. And there it is. Yeah, that is. It's one of the first squeeze cuts. And that one I did a 5x4, that I call it. So the points are a little bit different, but not that much. So it almost looks like a star. And it's really bright. And that one had color in it before I started. Here I am cutting it. Doing polishing of a facet here. So this is just one facet that I'm polishing, and this is how long it takes. This is the first squeeze cut, and it's an X cube, and I decided to use it on the Sunstone. I came up with that cut myself, and I prayed about it, and I believe I got an answer from God, and it turned out pretty nice. So I used that cut, and all these ones you're going to see coming up are prior to inventing the squeeze cut sunstones that I cut earlier. And there's that one I called the star cut, and people promptly copied it. A lot of cutters, and it's okay, but it was a simple cut, and I'm sure other people had done it before me. But it worked really well, and it's just a hex, Portuguese hex, and anybody could do it. I mean, it's not hard, but it makes a really nice stone. And if you know what angles to cut your sunstones at, it'll come out really nice. That's something I advise anybody who wants to make a nice sunstone to try. And this one came out better than almost all of them. And here's a parcel of stones I bought one year. Here's another one. And I found people that, here's one of the plush diamonds, and this is what it looks like direct sun. And this is indoor light. Yeah, you know, it's kind of hard to explain to people that red stone they bought is a yellow, so I like to sell them in person, you know, and not. Here is more rough, and these earrings I made for a customer, and I think his wife still wears them today. Yeah, I cut both of those, and my friend Don set them. Don Lawther. He did a great job. Here they are not set. There's another photo of them. And they're just a Portuguese hex. And it came out really nice. Here's a big pear cut stone I did. And here it is. It was, I think, 16 carats. And it just had a little bit too much schiller for me. But the fellow I cut it for really liked it, and it's a Portuguese base, and it sparkled real nice. Had a lot of color, but just had a little bit too much schiller. I think I could have done it better if I had cut it today than when I cut it, but I was still learning then. And here's some more rough. And this was one of the first stones I cut, and it's one of the best. And also that went to a client. Really happy with it as well. And this one was another one that I was really happy with. Here's some that I used some different cuts. That this one I called a home plate, and this one had a real high crown. These are basic cuts, not anything too fancy, and they weren't real. They held the same color all the time. They didn't change. This is a big pear cut that I cut. Gave that to a client at the end of the deal. And I kept the smaller stones. I gave him the bigger ones out of his parcel, and he was really happy. And this is one that I cut. It did change color, but it wasn't bright enough. As you can see, it does change color quite a bit. Here's the one that was multicolored again. And those are good for earrings, I think. Here's one of them by itself, up close. There's the other one. And here's another one. This is just a brilliant cut round. And I like that cut for the sunstone. Here's a certain cut that I liked how it turned out. And it had real steep sides, and the color really showed up well. There it is laying on its side. Very bright. This is another piece of rough. I really like that one. Here's the stone I got from it. So they like rectangle cuts. They really do, sunstones. Happy with my video. Have a good day.